I know that people are a part of this planet, but when I look at it, it seems like everything else seems to be in sync with it, and we seem to be going in the wrong direction. I mean, I love people, but I don't know. It just seems like there's something going on below the surface, something operating unseen that challenges us in a weird and mysterious way. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Magician card, and the Magician is also known as the Magus in the Thoth system. And then you may see it as the Baudelaire in the Marseille. And then I've seen it as the Juggler as well. But this is one of those cards that it still means the same thing across the board. But I think that each one of those names is very fitting. I think that the Magician implies that level of illusion. It's actually known as the Lord of Illusion in the Thoth system. And then we have the Baudelaire, which is a street magician. So it applies that sleight of hand. This may be someone that uses maybe cups to manipulate someone to kind of pick the wrong cups. You've seen that kind of thing before on the streets. And then you have the Juggler, because he's really juggling between right and wrong, duality. This card is about duality. There's a lot of opportunity with this card. This card is about manifestation. It's about bringing your desires into the physical world and making things happen the way you want them to happen. You have that power, you have that authority to do that. But I think also that the way we choose to do it, it's important as well, because with this card, usually when I get it, I always think about the High Priestess card. I think about connecting to my heart, connecting to my inner core, and finding out how this choice or this decision that I'm making is going to affect everyone. The way you use your manifestation is up to you. And I think that the ability to use our intellect and to make those correct choices, it involves seeing through a lot of the illusions that are out there. And there are a lot of them. And I think some decks make this more obvious than others. I like on the Tarot of the New Visions, how you have the Magician and he's addressing this crowd, and then the people are really distracted. They're looking at the Magician, but behind him you have this monkey that's probably going to go out and take their jewelry or rings or whatever. Well, those are, that is jewelry, but take their possessions and bring it back to the Magician, and he's going to basically take advantage of them. And I think that happens today as well, even on a higher level. I think there's a card that I have here from the New Era Elements Tarot that really displays that. And the Magician is this businessman, and he's distracting people with media, with all manner of things, and they are not seeing the big picture. So what we see at the surface is not really reality. So again, he's the Lord of Illusion. And I think that it's like a computer. You work with that interface, but the core, or what's really going on within the system, within the programming, within the hardware, you're not interacting directly with that. And it can be very different from what you're actually seeing on the display. And so navigating all of that, seeing through the real and the fake, it's become more difficult nowadays, especially now that we're going to start moving into using AI and the way we can generate images and things. It's going to be even more important that we tap into that High Priestess energy when it comes to manifestation and knowing what's best for us. So like I said, with this card, the potential is limitless. You can see that there's an infinity symbol above the Magician's head. So there's so many options, whether they're right or wrong, for you to take. And so just getting the job done is the objective of the Magician. No matter what happens as a result of that, that goal is the objective. So whether there's collateral damage, it's not a consideration as far as the Magician is concerned. And so that's why he's known as the trickster. That's why he's kind of got that edge to him, is because there's this mask that he's holding up to the world, but he's not showing his true self. And I love on the Navigators of the Mystic Sea Tarot how you can see that there is this being coming through this portal, and he's created this little world, and he's got this mask. So whatever's in this world can't really see what he's doing behind the scenes. And then also very similar on the Japaridze Tarot, you have the same thing. You have this mask in the background, and then you have this world being created. You can see that it's like the early earth. And so that goes back to a lot of esoteric teachings by the Gnostics or by Cathars or even by Thoth in the Emerald Tablets. If you read the Emerald Tablets, it tells that story very clearly. It's right there. And it talks about a lot of deception that goes on, and it really reveals a lot of things. And I think that the Thoth deck, it is a demonstration of this power. So what I mean by that is on the Thoth deck, you have Mercury. Mercury is about the mind. It's about thoughts. And one of the main elements of this deck is air. And air is actually one of the more important elements when it comes to the magician, because that's where your manifestation takes place, in your thoughts, in the mind, in the intellect. That's where it begins. That's the foundation of how you create in the physical world. And then from there you have fire, which is the actions and the steps that you take, but the implementation of those thoughts, that initial spark, is the important thing. And when Lady Frida Harris drew the Magus, she drew 3 different cards, and I'll put those cards up here so you can see them. And the one that was selected was this one. And I think that it was a good choice. I think it was inspired, and intuitively, I just feel like it was right, because if you look at the bottom, you can see this thing at the bottom. It's like a half baboon, half human thing. And that's called a cynocephalus. A cynocephalus is a deity that has part human and part some sort of animal. Like Thoth is drawn like that. You have Horus and even Anubis, all of those different deities that look like that, Egyptian deities. And so this one, this half baboon, half human thing, if you look up Thoth, you typically will see him as the ibis, but also he is commonly drawn as this baboon type thing with a crescent moon over his head. He challenges the magician's authority. And I think that's really important, and it distinguishes Thoth from Mercury. So there's some indication that they may not be as connected as we think. And I think a lot of decks, they put Thoth as, like this one right here, the 7/8 Tarot Mythical, they put Thoth as the magician. I think that's okay, but I think it's important to make that distinction and not really place him in the trickster position, and to really read the Emerald Tablets and see what he's talking about there before doing that. That's just my perspective on it. We're going to move on here. We'll talk about the authority of the magician. I think it's important to really pinpoint what kind of authority the magician actually has. Like, you have your own authority. You are a sovereign being. And I think that the magician is falsely trying to place his rights or his authority over people. And so he's holding up a wand, and he's holding that wand up as a sign of authority and a sign of power. It's also a conduit. It's also a way to conduct energy, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So if we think about ceremonies and we think about the bearer of the mace is someone who claims to have authority to present different awards or achievements to people who have been through maybe a university or accepting a new position. So the bearer of the mace will be there when people of authority are present to bestow those accolades. And I think that he's trying to demonstrate his authority by that stance. And a lot of people say that stance is him saying, as above, so below. That is true. He's saying that as well. But he's also pointing down with his Jupiter finger. And the Jupiter finger is a symbol of power and a symbol of authority. So Jupiter, what you have to understand about Jupiter is that it is a failed star. Not that Jupiter is something negative or anything like that, but it was supposed to be a star, but it did not ignite. So the magician's power and authority is a false contract. It's a false idea that he doesn't want people to realize. So he's hiding behind a mask. He doesn't want people to realize their power. And so he's trying as best he can in this world to distract and to manipulate and to keep people from going into that high priestess situation and finding that. So to go inward is important. That's why meditation is important. That's why it's important to look at your actions and your thoughts carefully. So anyway, fire is about power. It's about making those manifestations come into the physical world. And we do that with our actions. And then also we have water and we have earth that are part of it as well. So our emotions play a role. Everything in this world needs power. So if you just look at everything, even the basic things like phytoplankton, they need the energy from the sun. Everything, it travels through this whole realm. And people, we think that we're at the top. We think that nothing feeds off of us. We think that our energy is just within us. We think we don't see anything else that could be feeding off of us. Just like the blade of grass doesn't even recognize the cow. But the rule of this realm, even the universe itself, needs to be powered. And that power comes from us. So that power comes from our emotions, our thoughts. So that's why we are constantly divided. That's why we're constantly trying to resist a lot of the things that are happening with our energy, and that why the Magus is conducting it. If you actually look up information on the Magus, you'll find in a lot of descriptions that he's a conduit, and a conduit is something that conducts energy. So he's a conduit trying to empower and keep this thing going through the energy that we provide. And if we read the Emerald Tablets, we can see clearly that he states that. Thoth basically says that. In fact, I'll read that right now. So Thoth says, "Far in the past time, lost in the space time, the children of light looked down on the world. Saw they the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond. Knew they that only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from the earth to the sun." So basically, Thoth and some other beings were looking down, and they saw that we've been bound to the planet and being basically used and in bondage. And so he wanted to free us. And so that's why he wrote the Emerald Tablets, because it has a lot of secrets in there. So I'm going to continue to read here. He also says, and this has to do with our consciousness, because our consciousness is very powerful. We are very different from other beings on earth, right? We're very different from other beings in this realm. And we are able to produce enormous amounts of energy. So he says, man is a star bound to the body until in the end he is freed through his strife. So a star bound to a body. So a star is so powerful. But he says, he who knows the commencement of all things, free is he from the realm of the night. So basically you have zero, which is the full, and the full is the monad, or our true source, and it fragmented. And one of those fragments is known as Sophia. And Sophia wanted to have her own creation. And so she gave birth to the Lord of this world, according to, I think, the Gnostics. And I love on this card right here by the Materia Prima, you have hydrogen, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. And this woman, because it was a female energy, gave birth to this masculine energy, which was the Magus, or the Lord of Illusion. And you can see that she's pregnant. And so I thought, this makes a lot of sense for the Magician card, because it's actually giving birth to that emanation. So let's talk about hydrogen. So hydrogen is, of course, the main component of the universe. It's the main component of the sun. It is on the hexagonal elements. Hydrogen is also the Magician card. It says at the bottom here, I think it says Magician, or does it say Magus? Yeah, it says the Magician. And yeah, it is what gives us our powers. That energy that's released, I feel, is spiritual energy. It comes from the strong force within the nucleus, which I feel is spirit. And so that comes to earth. We take that in. It empowers us. And that's our true source. But it's also that basic building block. So we have everything else being built off of that. And it's interesting how each fragment or each new thing that we get from helium can be so different. And those fragments that come from the monad, that come from source, they're very different from where we belong. Extremely different from where we belong, as all of those things are stepped down in energy, right? What we have there is something that we can't comprehend. But that's pretty much the message that I wanted to give you. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Will. This is Atypical Tarot, and I'll see you next time. Bye.